Chosen one, pay attention. If you were guided to this video, it's because time is running out. Today, September 20th, under the influence of the waning moon in Virgo, a spiritual cycle is coming to an end. But this is not a common ending. It is a direct call from the universe, a final warning for you to release what is still weighing you down, let go of what is still holding you back, and close the doors that you know can no longer be opened. Because in just a few days, a new portal will be activated. And if you are still carrying the old, you will not be able to cross over lightly. You may have noticed relationships growing distant, certain habits losing their meaning, or your inner silence growing louder. This is a sign that you are being prepared. In this video, I will show you what this closure with the waning moon truly means spiritually, why this moment is critical for the chosen ones, and how to align yourself now so you don't miss the entry into the new cycle that is coming. Stay with me until the end, because there, you will understand what you need to leave behind and what is about to be revealed. There's a part of you that everyone admires, the calm presence, the one who knows what to say, the one who fixes the mess. But what they don't see is the weight that builds quietly when you're always the one holding it together. The recent waning moon in Virgo doesn't just highlight what's broken in the outer world. It turns the mirror inward, showing the cracks you've carefully hidden. You've worn the mask of resilience so long, it fits like skin. But there's a deeper truth whispering beneath it. You're tired. You weren't meant to carry generations of unspoken needs. Somewhere along the way, you began believing that your worth was tied to your usefulness, that love had to be earned through sacrifice. But what if this drive for perfection is actually a shield? A way to stay busy enough to avoid the ache you've buried under lists, tasks, and expectations? Virgo's medicine isn't duty. It's discernment, and that means knowing when it's time to put something down. Family patterns run deep. You may have inherited a legacy of silence, of holding fear no matter what. But healing doesn't always come from doing more. Sometimes, it begins by choosing differently. Choosing not to answer every call. Choosing to feel what's raw instead of covering it with productivity. Choosing to let the pieces fall so something real can rise. You're not betraying anyone by stepping back. You're finally being honest. This moment invites you to stop saving everyone else just to avoid meeting your own pain. That ache you've buried? It's not your enemy. It's your compass. It's pointing to the parts of you still waiting to be chosen, not for how much you give, but for who you are when you're not trying. Let go of being everything to everyone. Let yourself be something to you. They come to you when things fall apart. You know what to say, how to step in, how to manage the chaos before anyone even asks. But underneath your calm response is something no one ever thought to question. Who holds you when you're quietly unraveling? The waning moon in Virgo shines a subtle, honest light, not to expose your flaws, but to remind you that your endless strength has a cost. And lately, that cost feels heavier than you care to admit. You've been praised for being dependable. That became your identity. The fixer, the peacekeeper, the one who doesn't fall apart. But this phase whispers what you've long suppressed. Your worth is not in how well you hide your wounds. The more you chase harmony through control, the more disconnected you become from your own needs. Virgo teaches not just how to heal others, but how to turn that same devotion inward. It's time to treat yourself with the same care you've extended so freely. The pressure to be perfect didn't start with you. Somewhere in your story, someone taught you that love comes after usefulness, that showing weakness threatens stability. But that lesson is outdated. The real transformation begins when you dare to unravel, when you admit that being whole doesn't require being flawless. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for your family is to stop performing and start being. Let them meet the real you, not the version you crafted for their comfort. This lunar phase isn't about giving up. It's about surrendering what was never yours to carry alone. When you release the role of the one who always holds it all, you invite others to rise into their own strength. And in the space left behind, you can begin to nurture yourself. The balance you seek in your home starts by honoring your inner truth. Not because it's easy, but because it's finally time. You've kept the peace long enough. Silently negotiated the unspoken rules, tolerated the shifting moods, shaped yourself smaller just to keep the bond intact. But lately, something within has stirred, a subtle, persistent discomfort that doesn't fade when you smile. The waning moon in Virgo doesn't shout. It whispers, precise, surgical. It asks, gently but firmly, when did connection start to cost you your clarity? In trying to preserve what once felt like family, you've postponed the truth. Not all ties are sacred. Some are inherited burdens mistaken for love. There's no shame in having tried, again and again, to bridge the distance. But there comes a point when compassion becomes self-erasure. Virgo's wisdom isn't sentimental, it's discerning. It teaches that sometimes closure isn't a conversation. It's a quiet decision made in the privacy of your own healing. There may be guilt woven into your hesitation, the weight of expectation of what you should endure. But the truth is simpler. Growth changes how you receive the past. Patterns lose power when you stop rehearsing your part. Maybe the strength isn't in holding on, but in releasing what no longer nurtures. That's not betrayal. It's return to a version of you that no longer needs to bend to belong. This isn't about bitterness. It's about boundaries, the kind you were never taught to hold, the kind that let you honor your inner peace without explanation. Let the moonlight in Virgo help you recalibrate. Let it illuminate not who you need to fix, but who you are when you stop fixing. You're not leaving love behind. You're redefining where it begins. You tried everything, softened your tone, opened your heart, stayed longer than your soul could afford. Yet the harmony you hoped for never arrived. What you offered with sincerity was received with silence, or worse, with indifference. The waning moon in Virgo doesn't ask you to try harder. It offers something rarer, permission to stop proving and start preserving. Some connections thrive only when you shrink. And in your shrinking, you've mistaken survival for love. This moon casts light not just on others, but on your own reflection, asking what you've been giving up in the name of keeping things whole. Virgo doesn't decorate the truth, it clarifies it. Sometimes the most loving act you can offer is distance. Sometimes the healing comes in not going back. Closure isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's a quiet moment when you simply stop hoping they'll understand. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. The healing this lunar phase brings isn't about reconciliation with them. It's about reconciliation with the part of you that always felt it had to earn belonging. You don't need to keep doors open just to seem kind. Let this ending be an invitation, not a failure. Not all stories finish with resolution, but they can still end with release. You are allowed to choose peace over persistence. Let the moon in Virgo help you sift the essential from the expired. Your truth doesn't need to shout to be valid. It only needs to be heard by you. You've spent years holding things together, maintaining respect, keeping the peace, making sure everyone else felt safe. But in that noble effort, you left your own truth in silence. What was once called maturity became a mask for pain. The waning moon in Virgo now stirs the emotional dust you've tucked away under routines and roles. It doesn't ask you to confront others with anger, but to confront yourself with honesty. When did your voice become a threat? When did disagreement start to feel like disloyalty? The pressure to keep things orderly often disguises a deeper fear that if you speak, everything might fall apart. But real connection isn't built on suppression, it's built on presence. Virgo's sacred task is purification. And sometimes, the purest act is speaking the sentence you've rehearsed in your mind 1,000 times, but never dared to say aloud. There's no need for drama, only for clarity. Speaking your truth doesn't break the structure. It rebuilds it on ground that can actually hold weight. And even if some foundations crack, you'll be standing in a space that finally breathes. Family isn't about agreement. It's about witnessing one another in truth. Let this moon pull the poison from your chest, not to blame, but to finally breathe. This is not a demand for confrontation, but an invitation for release. The resentment you've carried didn't begin yesterday. It came from every time you swallowed what mattered just to keep the peace. The time has come to stop making yourself small for the sake of surface harmony. The moon wanes, and so can your silence. Let this moment be the threshold where your voice returns, not as rebellion, but as remembrance. There comes a moment when silence becomes heavier than any spoken word. The stillness you've kept in the name of order now pulses with unspoken truths. The waning moon in Virgo, meticulous and honest, holds up the mirror not to accuse, but to ask, how much of your peace is performative? Emotional dust settles only when left untouched, but healing begins when it is stirred. You're not here to disrupt harmony. You're here to discover where it was never real to begin with. Maybe it was one moment, or a series of small ones, where you learned that your voice didn't belong at the table. So you adjusted. You kept things polite, even when they hurt. But this lunar cycle carries a sacred invitation to cleanse what has fermented in silence. You don't need the perfect words, just the courage to start. Virgo's gift is discernment, and it now shows you that avoidance isn't peace, it's postponement. Not every conversation needs to end in agreement. Sometimes, the only resolution is being truly heard. Those held back sentences, those swallowed sighs, they carry more weight than you imagined. Releasing them might not change the past, but it transforms your place within it. This isn't about blame. It's about reclaiming your presence in the story you keep revisiting every time you're home. This moon phase is a rite of release. A letting go, not of people, but of old patterns that no longer serve you. It asks for honesty with compassion and bravery without aggression. You've cleaned the house 1,000 times. Now clean the air between you and those whose love was once a reason to hide. Speak, not to provoke, but to live lighter. It's time. There was a time when stepping away felt like the only way to breathe. Distance became your refuge, not from people, but from the pain of being unseen. You left to preserve what little of yourself remained, building walls not out of bitterness, but out of necessity. Now, under the light of the waning moon in Virgo, those walls don't crumble, they soften. Because healing doesn't always look like confrontation. Sometimes, it's simply readiness. Your absence was misunderstood by some, but they never saw the version of you that had to leave in order to survive. You weren't running, you were choosing life. And now, that same path that took you away whispers gently of return, not to resume old roles, but to show up as someone wiser, grounded, whole. This lunar transit doesn't demand a reunion, it offers a reckoning. A space to see what connection might look like without the old wounds directing the script. Forgiveness isn't about letting them off the hook. It's about untying yourself from the loop of resentment that still drains you silently. It doesn't require forgetting. It requires presence. Can you sit across from the past, not as a prisoner of what was, but as someone no longer afraid of remembering? Reconnection starts not with the other, but with the version of you that no longer needs to prove or protect. Let the moon be your mirror, not to reflect what went wrong, but what can be made right through self-honor. You're not going back to be the same. You're offering a new tone, a new pace, a new boundary, and perhaps a new love. One that isn't naive, but conscious. One that isn't desperate, but generous. The bridge isn't built by fixing them. It's built by you returning whole. You've spent years untangling your identity from the roles you were handed. The silent one, the strong one, the one who never asked, only gave. The space you took wasn't selfish, it was sacred. And in that distance, something inside you matured. The waning moon in Virgo now draws a quiet line in the sand. You don't have to return to the same dynamics, but you can return to yourself in the presence of others. The mind may recall who hurt you, but the soul remembers who you are when you're not in defense. And that memory matters more. It becomes the compass when you consider re-entering a space that once demanded too much. This moon invites a different kind of reunion, not of repetition, but of recalibration. You don't need to fit into old stories. You're here to write new ones, with presence instead of pain as the narrator. There's someone you've kept at a distance, not out of hate, but to protect your healing. The silence served its purpose, but now, so might the conversation. A genuine one, where you don't shrink to be accepted, nor raise your voice to be heard. Where you say, calmly, "I've changed," and mean it. Reconnection isn't a promise of how things will be. It's an offering of who you are now. The moon wanes, and with it, the old expectations lose power. You owe no one perfection, but you owe yourself peace. If there's a bond that still holds a pulse, this is the moment to touch it with truth, not obligation. Show up not to fix the past, but to honor the part of you finally ready to be seen as you are, not wounded, not distant, but whole and willing. Some ties feel ancient, not because they are long, but because they are heavy. The family you come from gave you your first shape, but not your final form. Still, parts of you linger in those childhood corners, repeating unspoken rules that were never yours to follow. The planetary alignment on September 20th whispers through your bones. Not all loyalty is sacred. Some of it is just fear, dressed in old rituals. You've taken the roles they needed: protector, provider, peacekeeper, carving yourself into versions that never felt true. Now the current shifts. There's a cosmic insistence on release, and it doesn't come in rage, but in clarity. This is not about rejection, it's about discernment. Where are you still living a life scripted by someone else's unhealed past? And more importantly, why? This transit opens a subtle door, not into confrontation, but into liberation. It asks, what are you still apologizing for? Whose silence are you protecting with your own voice buried beneath obligation? You were not born to inherit unresolved burdens like heirlooms. The moment has come to step back, not with bitterness, but with reverence for the truth of who you're becoming. Ending doesn't mean abandoning. It means honoring your evolution. When you cut the cords of guilt and old promises, you don't sever love, you purify it. What remains, then, is not duty, but devotion, the kind that comes from choice, not compulsion. The September 20th alignment is not a storm, it is a stillness. And in that stillness, you hear it clearly. Freedom is not rebellion. It is remembering who you are beyond the bloodlines. You were taught that loyalty meant silence, that keeping the peace required self-erasure. But now, the alignment of September 20th brings a different kind of invitation, one that doesn't ask you to hold the lineage together at the cost of your spirit. This is not betrayal. This is evolution. You were not meant to carry every unspoken sorrow like a legacy passed down in hushed tones. The moment calls for a reckoning, not with others, but with your own story. Where have you confused endurance with love? Where have you mistaken obligation for belonging? The cycle you're stepping into cannot coexist with inherited pain worn like armor. The release is quiet, not dramatic. It's a soft exhale after years of holding your breath to keep the structure standing. There is power in letting go with grace. You can bless the past without being bound to it. The family system doesn't fall apart when you heal, it recalibrates. Your healing is not an act of rebellion, it's an offering to the whole. As you begin to untangle guilt from love, you begin to see clearly. The thread you hold is your own, and that is enough to weave something new. What if the true healing wasn't in fixing anyone, but in freeing yourself? The transit reminds you, roots are anchors, not chains. The ancestors do not ask for your sacrifice, they ask for your wholeness. When you choose yourself with integrity, you don't abandon the tribe, you bring medicine to its wound. This is the threshold. Cross it clean. You were never meant to stay small, just to stay connected.